apologize. I forgot to start recording. It's the bane of my, I'm so bad. So I'm going to make you go back.
I got to go back?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So no problem. So we call this the ungraded pop quiz. So if you see there, it says pop-up quiz. So this is my name for this. I call it a best practice or a process. I call it a pop-up quiz, like a pop-up shop or a pop-up restaurant. And really the three main features of it, I'll put together before each class 5 questions. So it's a verbal, if you want to call it verbal assessment, I put together 5 questions. Now, this is really an arbitrary number. 5 is the optimal number for me. It may be 2, it could be 10. And the main reason for this is I'm looking to gauge the comprehension of the students on the prior course's material. So I want to see where the students are standing before I move forward in the next class. And this is a way of doing that. It's also a way of talking to the students and getting a gauge of really what's connecting with them. So I can find out really what's helping them to learn, because the ultimate goal is for them to successfully learn the material. So there may be areas that they might have problems in. And I'll give examples of this face-to-face, and then I'll touch on some areas online as well. So when we talk about questions, the use of questions is to help us to find out where the student stands, their understanding of the material. So you can say it's probing. I like to use it, as I mentioned, in my financial accounting courses to get an idea of where the students are with the material. So I may ask questions about the accounting equation or foundational items that they need to know in order to successfully move forward in the class without difficulty. So it gives me that gauge initially. So it does come, I have this image here. It does come down to really asking, do you understand the material? Because I may ask certain basic questions that they should know by that point in the course. So this is a way of finding out, okay, do I need to slow down? Do I need to pump the brakes and spend more time on a certain area? Do the students need more help? Maybe if I'm not able to help them in the classroom, then maybe I see that I might need to pull in other resources. There might be certain students that may need tutoring. This will help me to see that by asking those questions. It's another way of engaging students. So when I mean engaging, you've got the students talking, we're talking about the material. Normally in this process, when I start asking questions about the material, you might get some complaints. I might get some students say, I don't understand. It typically leads into other discussion tied around the course topic or the classroom. So it's a great way to get the students involved in the whole classroom environment. The other point is by asking the questions, it's a way of reinforcing important topics. So especially in my accounting courses, I pick certain items that I want to ask questions about. And again, the key thing I want to emphasize with this, I mentioned it's a best practice, and it's a habit, and it's become a process for me. So at the beginning of every class, this is what I'm doing. So the students get used to this. They get used to, they know he's going to ask us questions, and typically in certain courses, I may ask the same questions. What is the accounting equation? How does this work? I ask the questions at the beginning of class, so it becomes part of the class, but it's also, it emphasizes that by I'm asking those questions, these are things that you need to know. One big question that I usually ask: who's read the chapter? So that's one big one. And by asking that, I notice I get a lot more students. Normally in the beginning, I might see 3 or 4 hands raised when I'm asking if they've read the chapter, or have they even started reading the chapter. But as days go by and weeks go by, I see more and more hands raised. And I attribute that to the students seeing that, okay, he's asking us about it, it's important. So I think that it helps to reinforce and emphasize. The other portion is, I would say, it helps students to understand the course material. I always say, if you have a question, you're going to have an answer. So eventually someone's going to give the answer. And you keep asking questions. You've got the students hearing the answers. They may not contribute, but they're also learning and taking part in that, whether it's actively or passively. So I think that helps them to understand the material as well. The other thing is, many times I've seen, if one student will ask a question, maybe the whole room is quiet, but you ask a question, one student answers, you may get 5 other students nodding their heads because that person's asking something that they're actually thinking, or they might be even nervous to even mention. So I think that adds to helping the students to understand the material, and also it contributes to the whole classroom environment. So when I talk about using this, I mentioned I normally, and actually what I do, I come into the classroom, I greet everybody, say hello. I'm really, really focused on having a very positive and open environment in the classroom. So I greet everybody, ask everyone how they're doing, and I call it administration. So I said, we're going to have some time for administration. During that time, that's when I'm asking these questions, and I'm getting engaged for the classroom. Now, on the back end, beforehand, typically, and when I'm speaking now, I'm speaking mainly on my accounting courses, because that's what I'm giving an example of. I'll typically have a lecture prepared, and I'll also have problems that are set up for that day or that evening for that course. And based on the questions and the answers and the feedback that I'm getting, I'll decide whether, and I'll give myself the leeway of whether either I'm going to have to go more content, meaning I'm going to have to lecture more, cover some more of the material, the current material, or I can streamline it and focus more on what I call the problems, working the problems and doing exercises on that portion. Because I see it as there has to be a balance between, you have to have the concepts and the actual work itself. You have to understand the concepts in order to really effectively do the coursework or answer the problems. So I go in with that mindset, and I'm asking questions. I ask them, how was the homework? How did you do on the exam? How was the quiz? What did you think about it? How were those questions? Have you read the chapter? So I ask certain questions like that, and then I usually end up with a point asking about something we covered in the last class. So I'm using an example of the accounting equation. I ask, what is the accounting equation? Okay, what are the parts of the accounting equation? So I get engaged there. So for example, if a majority of the classroom is giving me blank stares about the accounting equation, I'm going to switch gears, and I may take one step back, really, and I call it taking one step back to go 2 steps forward. So I may say, well, hey, we're going to use the majority of this time to cover the accounting equation again. And I assess that. So we may move back before we move forward into the next material. The other thing is, if everyone's fine, they're answering the questions, everyone seems to be on board, then I'll move forward with the course material. If there are some questions, if someone's telling me that, well, I looked at I started doing the reading, I really don't understand what this means or what that means, that's a cue for me that maybe I'm going to talk more about the concepts and give a little bit a longer lecture to go deeper into that. to give a deeper understanding on the concepts and a little less time on the problem work. But if everyone is telling me, wow, that was easy, I started reading the chapter, this is great, this is going to be so easy, I'm moving into the problem work more so, and I'm cutting down onto the lecture portion. So this goes into the next portion where I talk about allocating time for discussion. So with this, doing this, you get, for me, I've got to allocate time. So I've got to put that factor in that this is going to take time in the course period when I'm preparing. That we may have to have a discussion about something, or I might not even do the lecture for that class period that day. I may have to go back to what we were covering the previous class just to bring everyone up to speed so we can move forward confidently. So that, I think the important part of this is allocating time for discussion, really taking time to listen to the students, and really I try to make this beginning part of the class about them so they feel comfortable to open up, and also to give feedback about the course, to have a discussion, give them the opportunity to talk about the course so they feel, the ownership in our course. I always say it's our course. Example of this, I'm teaching a course. It is at another institution where we have a discussion board, and so you have to do an initial post, which is 200 words. You have to do 2 peer replies, which is 75 words each. So all of this is due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Homework assignments are due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. So during this whole asking for feedback, any thoughts, one of the students telling me, a lot of my classmates are procrastinating. So everybody waits until, Saturday or Sunday to do their initial post, which makes it hard for me to do my replies. So I said, you know what, that's a good point. I wouldn't have, thought of that. That's a good point. So we switched gears. Instead of having, if you're not able to find someone to do peer replies, the solution was, okay, give a 75-word example of that accounting concept. So put it in your own words. Give an example of that. So then that would allow other students in the class who want to actually get in there and finish the work early, they can do that. So that for me, that was great because that alleviated a lot of, I'm assuming a lot of student frustration, which I might not have otherwise known about. There might have also been students who may not have, they might have given up on doing the assignment because, they may say, well, listen, I'm trying to get in here early. Everyone's procrastinating. This isn't working for me. So it might discourage students. So this is what I mean by asking these questions and garnering feedback. But it will take time. But I think it'll also give dividends later on down the road by letting students do that. The other thing is I've gotten here and taken notes. I mean, for me, I'm always jotting things down. So things like this, I jot it down. I also take notes on who's telling me, which student is telling me this, so I can remember. I think that at least helps me later on when I'm sitting down and planning the next class or thinking about the feedback, because that'll help me. I can look at my notes. It'll guide me in coming up with also other ideas. Because in this situation we're there, this is kind of spontaneous, spur of the moment, but later on I can sit back, look at my notes, maybe think of something else, some other ideas that'll improve on the course. So that was another portion. That was a recent example. Before any questions and answers, the other portion I said I would speak a little bit on the online portion. So for me, with my online courses, I'm very big on using social media. So in particular, I use YouTube. So I like to go in, post. In D2L, they have announcements. In Blackboard, they have announcements. I'll actually record videos. So in those videos, I'm talking to the students. I'm asking them questions for their feedback, and or letting them know they can contact me directly for certain items. Also, I tend to play around with it if I notice, especially finance, accounting, if I see students and certain homework assignments, they're having certain issues with problems, I'll actually make a video, record the solution, a similar problem or the solution to that problem, and post it. Now, many times when I post these videos, after posting them, I've noticed, and I guess they call this, what is it, in marketing, they call it unstructured data. There's structured data and unstructured data. So I get a lot of data from YouTube on my viewers, on who views it, because I may make a video, me solving a problem. And for example, I have a course, again, it's an accounting course. You know, I noticed that some of the students were turning in a assignment late. Many of them were having issues with it. I made some videos, talked to them, posted things, letting them know that they can reach out to me, they can contact me. Many of the students emailed me, some of them even called me. But I noticed I got maybe about 20 views. But when I posted a video of actually solving that problem, I had about 64 views.
That's so cool.
from that video. So I see that. So from that, I garnered some feedback, but I guess it's called unstructured data, that the students are viewing that more so, and they like to see that. So then I start making more and more videos from that. So I ask the questions, I'll get some responses, whether it's directly, indirectly, structured, unstructured, as far as the online environment. Are there any questions? Thank you so much. Are there any questions, any thoughts, comments?
Well, I gotta say, I mean, I think it's a really simple and elegant and powerful approach you're describing. I'm just impressed by its the amount of thought you put into it and how you dig into it and work with it and have adapted it, and it's really very cool. So thank you for your thoughtful sharing on this. I'm going to pause and see if anybody has an immediate question. I got a few, but I'll let others.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so at the end of the course or throughout the course, and maybe both, do you, well, let's just say at the end of the course, do you take stock of all the updates or changes you may have made based off of the quiz? And if you do you save any of that information for the next time you teach the course, or pass it on to other instructors who might be teaching the course?
Yes, I do. I actually, so when we're speaking right now, again, at another institution, I'm teaching 3 of the same accounting courses. So really, what it helps, so on Mondays, I teach the accounting course. Later on today, I'm going to teach that course. So the things that I've learned from the course yesterday, I use that today. So I take that feedback and I use that today, and I also try to incorporate in some way with the online course that I'm teaching. However, with forums like this, I'm able to share. But you're right. It's a great opportunity for me to share and talk to other faculty and colleagues about this.
Like kind of piggybacking on what Joe is asking, what have you noticed are some of the more challenging concepts for students in, say, your introductory, your accounting course that you teach? Like, have you seen some trends in where they struggle and in what works based on your questioning process? Like, what are the problem types or the big ideas that they struggle most with?
So adjusting entries, the accounting equation, doing the unadjusted trial balance, adjusted trial balance. Really what I think for me, what the issue is, especially in financial accounting, is that many of the students, this is their very first accounting course.
Yeah.
So I think jumping into it, to be honest, it doesn't really make sense. Why are we doing these processes? So I think that's where they stumble. So I think it's really a balance between the concepts and the actual practice.
The procedures.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a balance
That's
between
very
the
well
two.
said.
And if the concepts are not strong, it makes it difficult to grasp the whole actual doing
the procedure, the
right,
process.
Right.
So it's interesting though, because one of the things we've been sort of playing with these very same ideas in teacher education in a different way. Now it's not as maybe as technical as what you're teaching, but trying to actually take more of a practice-based approach where they do some of the practices and then learn the concepts alongside. Have you ever tried that or seen how if they do you think, this is more of a, I guess, a thought question, but can they derive some understanding of the concepts by doing the problems?
So are you talking more of a flipped class?
Yeah.
So
I guess.
So to get an idea, yes, exactly. So to get an idea of my, so let's say a financial accounting classroom, number one, on day one, I give every student note cards. So I give out these note cards. So I give out the note cards, and on those areas, so I have everyone. So we're all on the same page. They're writing on one note card. They've got the accounting equation. Mm-hmm. So then when we get to, let's say, adjustments, they're writing down the 4 types of adjustments. Mm-hmm. So at certain stages, there's certain things they have to have. Every class, they're coming with those note cards. Mm-hmm. So the thought is they have the note cards. They can refer back to them, and it helps them in remembering it as well. However, I'm still checking to see, do you understand what this is? Right. Yeah. So I go through certain checkpoints because that way I can gauge where everyone is as a class. Also, I do have lecture, and then we do problems, so we kind of flip it. So typically, I have everyone working in groups, and then we're doing problems, and then going over the problems and the answers. So that gets them acquainted with the whole practical portion of it. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of times the struggle is in understanding the concepts, because especially in a financial accounting course, I may approach a managerial accounting or an audit or another course differently because this is the very first accounting course. It might be the very first exposure anyone has to these concepts or the process.
So following up on the example you gave of how you might even apply what you've learned from one day of the course to the same course, different section the next day. When you do that, have you noticed any differences in outcomes or level of engagement if you're fine-tuning the way you're communicating information to the student? Because obviously the first, like class A, they didn't get a certain concept, and so you're reviewing it with them. And they actively told you, hey, they raised their hand and let you know we don't get this, and there's that interaction. Whereas that second class, you maybe already make that modification or already look to share that information with them. I was just curious if you had noticed any kind of difference in outcomes with maybe that's with either class being more engaged or less engaged, or potentially learning the content faster or at a different rate.
That's a great question. That's a great question. I would say, as far as the feedback portion, or let's say, for example, something that's going to overall improve the process or the working of the course, like I mentioned with that whole discussion board portion, that I would implement automatically in all of my courses, if that makes sense. But if it's a matter of I'm dealing with one group of students who are saying, well, we're having issues, and I might have half the class that say we don't understand this, versus going to another class and then applying those same steps. No, I'd get feedback from the class. But if it's something that I think that can be a blanket improvement for the courses overall, and it's not really, so in that situation I gave about the discussion board, I really did, the course or the requirements, they changed, but I would say that the base stayed the same, but there was an addition. So there was an extra option. So that if the student wanted to, they could actually, if you remember, they could actually write a 75-word example instead of doing a peer reply. So you give an extra option. So I'd give that to all of the students, and that's what I've done with those courses. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I actually have a question. In some of the courses, I hear crickets. You'll ask a question, especially at the beginning of the term, and you just, everyone's, especially I'm thinking of accounting, but I taught a couple business courses that, students are not very comfortable or confident. And so I'm just wondering, how did you, kind of really get them to engage, with the questions and start answering questions, like even at the beginning of class, because it's like pulling teeth sometimes. And I'm wondering, as a second part of that question, do you count that as part of their participation rate, formally or informally?
In the course I'm giving an example, no, I don't count that as part of the participation rate. Again, what I've learned is that I try to stick, well, I want to say it's a habit. So I stick with a habit, or if you want to call it a process, of committing to every class at the beginning of class. I mean, that varies to person. If you want to ask questions in the middle or the end, but I make sure at the beginning of every class we're having administration. That's what we're going to do, and I kind of tweak it and see what works. Normally asking everybody, how are you doing? Maybe I'll ask a student by name, how's everything going? Just to have an icebreaker, and then get into it. How was the homework? How do you guys feel about the homework? Another question that I ask, normally at the very start, is who has the textbook? That was another example that I didn't mention, but that's a big one. You may not.
It's a hard lesson to learn.
Right, making sure you know who has the book or who doesn't at the beginning of or not at this institution, but at the beginning of the semester at another institution. First question I'm asking: who has the book? And maybe two people are raising their hands that they actually have the book. So immediately I know, okay, there's got to be some type of adjustments done here, because no one. And then we have a conversation about, okay, did you order the book? Are you reading the book? What's the status with your book? So that conversation starts there, finding that out. So I hope that kind
answers my question. Thank you. Yeah.
I was wondering if you intentionally think about these questions, these 5 questions, and their relationship to the other assessments in the course, your other midterm or final or whatever kinds of assessments that you have. How does it relate?
As far as, well, as far as the preparation for it or preparing the students for it?
No, just like how
just to clarify.
How you choose the questions, I guess, is, and you said a little bit about this already, I guess I'm drilling down a little bit, like the things you keep you think about when you're making the selection of those questions. Is one of them an intentional alignment to a later major assessment they have to do? Or
Sure, I'd say it would lead to that, because they would have to master they would have to have a certain level of understanding of the material in order to complete the homework, which would ultimately lead to some type of quiz.
But what are those assessments in your classes typically? The other, like the major assessments in the class.
So they would have quizzes, they would have a final
that
exam,
are actually graded.
and they have homework assignments.
Okay.
So they have homework assignments, and so for example, we're talking about the courses I'm teaching now. My focus is to make sure I'm arming the students in the classroom with enough of a strong enough foundation so they can effectively do the homework assignments, which are weekly. So they get the homework assignments and they're able to complete that, then they have that master where they can.
So they're like all building
exam.
blocks. Like
It's
these 5 questions you ask is a building block to be effective on the homework, which is a building block to be effective on a midterm or a final.
Exactly, and the progress of the course.
Yeah.
So if I see that, okay, we're not really, this is a way to really even to evaluate myself, because if we're not able to move forward, if students aren't understanding certain basic items, then I need to know I've got to change something, but these are things that the students have to move forward and achieve in order to go to that next step in the course.
Nice.
The other thing is many of the students have given me feedback that they like that. They're able to talk about things. So just from a social aspect, you're asking questions, you ask how they're doing, do you have the textbook? They feel the caring.
It's very learner-centered.
Right. So, and then especially, so when I gave that exam, and this happened last week when we were talking about the discussion board, I mean, the students really, they like that. The fact that, okay, we made this change in the course. I didn't come up with that idea. It was the student she came up with. Right. She came up with the idea, but it's collaborative as well.
Yes.
So it's, it's like we're working together. So
Cool.
I think that enforces it and encourages also students to participate as well. That's great.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Well, if there's no thoughts or questions, here's my contact information. So if anyone does have any questions or like to reach out, feel free to do so. Also, as I mentioned, I'm big online. So these are all of my social media outlets. You can follow me on my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel for business, one for accounting, and one for finance. I've got Facebook groups, Periscope, Instagram, Twitter as well, and Facebook. So feel free to reach out to me there as well.
So you make use of all these things in your teaching, do you?
Yes, but the main one is the YouTube.
Is it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I love that, what you described in terms of, actually, it's kind of like a little bit like that Khan Academy, though, in higher ed, where you do the problem and think aloud as you're doing it, and they watch it. That's very cool. It's very cool. Yes. So, Joe, unless you got any final, I don't know, we haven't heard from Neil. I don't know if he's been able to really hear us or not.
I'm sending it back just real quick.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think. No, this is great, and I hope other folks can check out the recording and look to integrate this kind of thing.
And thanks, Joe. And you're right. This is an opportunity. I need to improve on sharing things and with colleagues and the like. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for jumping in here and doing this. Yeah, it's very, inspiring. All right, well, I will stop the share.
I didn't hear anything back from Neil, so.
Okay, well, okay. All right, well, thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll sign off.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.